As many of you may know, Warcraft Rumble is now in maintenance mode, with Blizzard saying that they did not have enough long-term success for it to be a sustainable game, essentially. So now that begs the question of, where did Rumble go wrong? What could they have done differently to make the game more successful, to bring in more players, to keep them playing? We're gonna try to discuss some of those issues from an open-minded standpoint, where there's a lot of things they could have done. Certainly, there's essentially an endless number of things that they could have done, but we're going to take a look at some of the things that I would personally consider have done doing differently. So we'll kind of just go through a list of things that I think could have been done differently, and what I think personally could have improved the game. I know everyone's going to have a different opinion, and certainly if you do have a different opinion, feel free to share it in the comments. I have no problem listening to different points of view. But we're going to go over some of the things that I think they could have done differently that would have made it more fun for me and possibly other players as well. So we'll start with one of the things that I've heard many times in other people's YouTube videos and online, is that there just over time there just was not enough content. There was not enough new content. Like, everyone was always talking about, oh, when are the new raids coming out? And a lot of times, like, it would take them a lot longer to come out with that content than what was keeping the player base happy. So definitely a lack of content is something that they could have worked on. Maybe they could have had things already ready ahead of time that they could have released on a schedule, because it was already basically completed. So they could have completed it ahead of time and then saved it for later, so that they would have more of a steady stream of content to keep players interested and engaged in the game. That's certainly something they could have done. And I will touch more on that subject a bit more later, like about specifically what kind of content I would have considered if it was me making the game, which of course it's not. But on the content side, another thing that I would have recommended definitely very highly to them would be more content that includes your guild. There really wasn't a whole lot of things that required a guild. It was nice to have your guild to help you out with raids and molten core, things like that, but it really wasn't necessary, especially once open queue came. And like, I really didn't raid with my guild hardly at all. Once open queue started, everybody just kind of went to open queue, and it almost wasn't really necessary to have a guild except for their rewards. But other than that, like, there really wasn't a whole lot of collaboration that you could do with your guild to complete things. Once in a while there would be some events where you would get some extra points based on what your guild members did, so it kind of made a little bit of a difference. But there wasn't enough like teamwork. There wasn't like, oh, let's go, we need to work as a guild to complete this or that. Like, it didn't feel like you were really ingrained with your guild, like really trying to work as a team. And another note that I had on the whole guild thing is, like, a lot of the rewards that you get as a guild, you would get points from doing your surges. And the only issue I had with that kind of is, like, that's something that you would normally do anyway. Like, even if you didn't have a guild, of course you're going to do your surges to get your gold and things like that. So even though they kind of tied it into your guild, like, you're going to get some extra points for your guild so you can get these rewards, it wasn't something that was specific to a guild. Like, if you didn't have a guild, you would still do your surges. So it really wasn't something that encouraged you to participate in guild activities, because this is something that you would have done regardless of whether you had a guild or not. And another point on the content idea of things, I feel like there just wasn't enough like repeatable content or farmable content. And on that same note, like, there just wasn't enough reason to repeat the content. Like, there wasn't enough rewards for repeating content. Like, sure, you might get some experience and a little bit of gold, but like, they really, one thing that I think they could have done differently is add more complexity to the rewards. And they actually did a survey earlier on, once Warcraft Rumble launched, not too long after, if I remember correctly. They actually sent out a survey, and I did that survey, and they were kind of asking, like, what do you think about Rumble? What should we do differently? And one of the things that I mentioned is that the rewards, like the daily rewards and other things, they don't really feel that exciting. like, yes, you can get some experience, and once in a while you can get some gold, but that wasn't really all that exciting. Like, if you get some experience, that's great, that's nice, it'll help you progress at some point, but getting a little bit of experience doesn't change the game at all unless you actually level up your mini. Because if you don't gain a level, it doesn't get stronger. So if you get 500 experience, like, that's fantastic. But the reason it's not exciting, at least to me, is because it's not really immediately doing anything, and it's not really um, there's no different rewards. It's like you just get XP from the tomes every day, and then it's the same thing over and over and over again, and that kind of makes it monotonous and less enjoyable than if there was a bit more randomness, a bit more variety in the things that you could get as a reward for like daily quests and things like that, or daily missions, whatever you want to call them. And on that note, another thing that I would consider doing differently is like adding in certain upgrades for minis. You could do things, for example, like gems, like, oh, you add a gem slot to the mini and maybe it does a little bit more damage, or whatever specific things they wanted to add to it. And that would also open up a better avenue for them to make money on the game, because the more rewards you have as a possibility, the more things that people can spend money on. So if their concern was that, oh, we're not making enough money, that could help with that. Like, say, oh, I've got enough experience and I've got enough stars on my mini, but I really really need this gem or enchantment, or some item that goes with this mini to make it stronger. Like, you might be more inclined to spend money to power up that mini. And like I said, it just gives you another option, another thing that you could purchase from Blizzard to increase their revenue, and then also make it a little more exciting. Like, you could just get creative with these different types of enchantments or gems, and like really kind of create different purposes for the same mini without creating a new mini. And I do know that that's one of the things they struggled with, is it seemed like they didn't have a large enough team to create a bunch of new content. So this would kind of make it so that they could use the same existing content already, and just by adding in a gem or an enchantment, or whatever else you want to add to these minis, you could drastically potentially change the mini and how it functions, just by making significant changes with these gems or enchantments. So another thing that this game kind of struggled with early on, and possibly even later, is that it kind of felt like you really didn't have a whole lot of reason to play the game. Like, early on, the surges were not as frequent. They only had, I forget what the spacing was, but the surges were like, it was like one surge every 6 days or something along those lines, and then they split it into two, where it was like one every 3 days. So it was the same number of surges, it was just more spread out, because like sometimes I would just sign in for that day, do my surges, and then it's like, oh well, I guess I really don't have much to do for a week, so I kind of just didn't play the game. And the problem with that is, like, as a game creator, you want people to play your game. So, and when they did the survey, that's one of the things I recommended to them. I was like, hey, like, you need more content on a daily basis. Like, people need a reason to sign in. Like, they need some rewards, like a little bit of gold, a little bit of XP here and there is okay, but it's not enough necessarily to keep people coming back. You need to give, like, one thing that they started doing later on was, like, they would have events where there were like daily check-in events, but those really don't need to be events. Like, a lot of games have daily check-in rewards that are not events. It's like those are always there. They never go away. Like, maybe they reset every month, and when the month's over, everything resets and you can get different rewards, or possibly the same rewards for checking in again. And then just another note on the surges, I actually wrote down, it looks like they were initially twice a week, Sunday and Thursday. And then they were changed to 4 times a week: Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. It looks like December of 2023. So they doubled the amount of days that you can do surges, but they didn't increase how much gold you could actually get for it. One issue that Rumble had multiple times was bugs. I mean, there were some game-breaking bugs. The most recent was, Molten Core. People couldn't get past the first wing. Like people just like when people want to play your game and they can't. That's obviously a problem. They did have that bug a while ago where like certain people couldn't log in at all, and if they were on a guest account, then they might possibly lose their entire account. Like those are some very serious issues that certainly can, cause people to quit your game and, never come back. So like a lot that's definitely an issue that certainly didn't help Rumble to succeed. If you're going to have things going wrong that literally make it so people can't play your game, that's a major issue, and that's going to contribute to the reason why people don't want to play your game. Obviously, some people are going to fight through it and keep playing, but there's going to be some people that just say, "Hey, I've had fun, and now I'm just going to stop playing because I just can't take it anymore." And I definitely understand people that were in that situation, especially people that lost their account or might have lost their account. Another thing that they could have done in terms of guilds is trying to do some sort of guild versus guild competition. Like most games these days, you're going to have, this guild against this guild in some sort of tournament or whatever. And, whoever gets the most points wins or whatever. But I think that would also be another thing that would encourage, guilds to work together for a mutual goal. That would be one thing they could have added to the guilds. And it could be something just as simple as like getting points for doing your dungeons or getting points for completing raids. And then whoever gets the most points gets something for it. So it encourages you to have an active guild, and everyone contributes, and then you're all trying to contribute so that you can get rewards. Something along those lines without actually needing to add new content. They just have to keep track of who has done what. Could have worked out and would have added, more interest in the guilds, like more reason to be part of a guild, more things to fight for. That's certainly something they could have done. On the note of making more money, because I know that companies care about making money, they could have done more with skins and cosmetics. People love skins and cosmetics. I know that it may not be the cheapest thing to pay artists to create new skins and things, but they could have done different colors. Uh, you know, Kind of like they did with the gold skin. It's kind of just they took the skin and they made things gold, like the golden griffin and Sneed and all those other ones. They kind of just took the skin and made it gold. So one thing I already kind of touched on was like I personally really like the cooperative gameplay that Rumble has. So I personally wish that they would have done more with that, like just more cooperative gameplay, whether it's two players versus two other players, or two players versus two AIs, or you could even potentially do more than two players. But I'm not. I feel like they probably may not be able to do that. And another thing that I think they could have done is definitely doing more events. Like I know they had like the Blinktron event and all these other events that they would do, but they could have done like simpler events that didn't have as great of rewards as what they had. Where it's like oh, do your dungeons for this week, and then maybe you'll get another you get an extra tome or something. But one thing I've seen for other games that have been successful for many, many, many years is they try to have a lot of events. And the reason for that is because it makes content that's kind of boring. It gives players a reason to play that content, even though they might not be excited about playing it. Like, say you had an event out where you had to do 10 quests, and I'm not someone that does quests. I really don't like them. But if they gave me a reward that I cared about, I'm gonna do those quests. And that's something that I think they were missing in this game. Is they, as I touched on this earlier, but they just didn't give players enough reason to play their game. So you got to give them a reason to play, and giving them rewards is certainly a reason. Having events would kind of mix it up. It would say like, oh, this week you have to do quests. You have to do 100 quests in the week, and then you get this. And then next week maybe you have to do dungeons or you have to do a raid. or maybe it's a mixture of things, or maybe you can do some of one and some of the other, and you can still get credit. But they should have done, in my opinion, more to encourage players, to continue playing the game even after like they've gone through all the campaign and they've finished all their raids for the week. Like they still need a reason to continue playing. If you want them to spend money, you have to give them a reason to play the game and a reason to spend money. So I think that's something they could have done in that respect, is just add in more events. So I'm sure I could keep talking about this subject, forever and ever. There's a lot of things that Rumble could have done. There's a lot of things that people would have liked to see, certainly, that would have made them excited. Like I know some people would have liked to see like Illidan and things like that. Like that would have been cool. But yeah, what do you guys think? What do you think they could have done differently? What did they do wrong? What are the things that could have kept this game alive longer? Like it's still not completely dead. There's definitely people that play it all the time. Like I still play the game. But what do you think they could have done? Yeah, feel free to drop that down in the comments. Let me know. I'm definitely interested in knowing what other people think, just because it's definitely an interesting subject. What could they do differently? And yeah, if you have any questions, comments, leave them down below. Feel free to leave a like, and hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you. Have a great one.